if you feel confident, if you feel that you are safe, then learning a language is pleasure. It's done subconsciously. I want everyone to participate, to say what they think.
They don't know what to expect.
Exactly.
And they just have to deal with it.
We are not natives, so we are allowed to make mistakes.
We should, publish it somewhere.
I think we should publish it, yeah. In the natural conversation, topics shift. And I think students also have to be ready to it. So, sorry. You have trained me well. I have to say, you've trained me well.
Welcome to the next episode of our podcast. And today, our guest is Łukasz Kocańda. That's one of our teachers. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
I am happy that you're here. Anyway, who's Łukasz? Łukasz has been with us for almost 4 years already. He moved from Podhale when we started working together. Łukasz is not only a teacher of English, he also is a coach. He also teaches English at Military University of Technology in Warsaw. And he's also a personal trainer, which is his side gig, right?
I'm a person of many talents, I guess.
You definitely are. And there's one thing that I want to say about Łukasz is that he creates this atmosphere that makes people speak, regardless of the level. They just speak with Łukasz because he makes this magical atmosphere happen and people are not afraid to speak when they are around him. So Łukasz, what's your secret? What do you do to make them talk?
Well, if I knew, I would probably be a millionaire by now. So, I don't know, but I think this is part of my personality. I just enjoy being with people, being surrounded by people, and I'm generally interested in what they have to say.
All right.
So that makes it special, I think.
I guess that's right. I remember one workshop we had for teachers. And you said something interesting then. You said that what you do in your classes is you really listen.
Yeah.
So when people want to say something, you're very engaged in what they say, right?
Yes. I think this is, I don't know how to explain it, but I can remember things people told me 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. And then during classes, I will tell them, oh, I remember 2 years ago, you said you are renovating your kitchen and there was this one tile which didn't fit. Did you manage to fix it? And they are like shocked, like, how do you know that? And I always tell them, I have problems remembering people's names, but I remember facts. Like, someone tells me something funny and then, I remember it forever.
All right, so maybe that's your secret then.
I do remember our first interaction online. I know where I was sitting.
I know where I was sitting as well. You really made a very good impression. You said back then that, because I asked if you thought you were going to stay with us for longer, and you said it would depend whether it was a nice place of work or not.
I might have said that. But I think back then was not sure whether I would stay in Warsaw permanently or not. And now I know I want to stay here because it's a cool place to be.
It is. It's an amazing place.
Exactly. I don't understand people who say they don't like Warsaw.
I don't understand. But I've been here for so many years. Maybe it's this. But you haven't, and you still love it, right?
Yeah.
And this is an interesting thing as well. You are also a host of our meetup.
Yes, I am.
And you're like, even though you have been here much shorter than I am, you always know where to take the students because meetups take place in different cafes around Warsaw.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I like to spend most of my time outside. So I don't have that much time, to be honest, because as you said, I work in many, many places. But when I do have a bit of free time, I do visit, cafes, restaurants, pubs, places that some people might find interesting. Right. Or I also look for recommendations.
All right.
And then, if I'm amazed, then I have to invite people there.
There you go. So my understanding is that one of the questions you may ask your students is what they recommend, like where to go, right?
I do. And I have some I don't know, well, you remember Emily and Kate, since I'm teaching, and they recommended few pubs. 2 of them I didn't even know they exist.
Right.
So we're planning to go there together because I don't know whether you know, but I'm also going with students.
I do.
To restaurants. Some of the classes are just in the restaurant.
Exactly. So tell me how it works and what makes it different from a regular class.
Well, I generally try to make this class about the student. So I do have this ability to listen to people. So we normally, we talk about the things they like. they enjoy, the things which are happening in their life or the movies they've seen. And then I'm asking additional questions, or I ask additional questions. And on that, I build the whole class.
I see.
And if I spot some mistakes, I say, okay, we have to take a break now and let's focus on what you have just said.
All right.
So to be honest, if someone asks me, do I have like a pre-planned class? Quite often I don't, because it all depends on what students say. Like whether they come to class and they feel like, oh, I want to do some vocabulary work.
Yeah.
Well, do some vocabulary work. If they want to do some grammar, we'll do some grammar. I'm quite flexible when it comes to students' needs.
Perfect. And that's basically what we need, right?
Yeah.
And so what you do is you basically listen.
Yeah.
You adjust to what they want. And then if they're ready and eager to go outside of the school, outside of the online world, you'll just visit a restaurant. Do you see the difference in the way they speak if it's outside of the classroom?
Of course. It's a huge difference. Well, generally when we first meet and when we meet at school, people feel intimidated because they still think it's a school, right? So they have those the bias of being a student, right? So once they leave the school, once we go to a pub, we go to a park, we go to a restaurant, they completely start using a different language. So that's an interesting thing. And I really love observing them. Because then you can actually tell them that, you've changed, you've developed, you talk with your whole body and it's different.
So at which point do you suggest, come on, let's go. Let's just go to a restaurant. Let's go to a pub. Let's go to a cafe.
Well, that's a funny question because generally I tell this to students. I have, some additional classes to make up.
Okay.
Right? Because, we are flexible.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes the student cannot come to the class. So we postpone the class and we end up with, having 3-4 additional classes to do. So then I ask the student, would you be interested in, for example, grabbing a drink together on Saturday and speaking for 2 hours in English?
Right.
And if they are up for it, then we do it.
Okay. So in percentage, how many students agree to that?
40?
Okay,
40%?
that's not bad. But let's take into account the fact that you have a lot of students from outside Warsaw.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And if I think about Hubert or Violetta, I think those students who are not from Warsaw, they might agree to actually go out as well if they were here.
I did go out with Hubert. I think 2 times.
But he's in Krakow.
He is in Krakow, but he quite often visits Warsaw. So when he is here, we sometimes meet at school or we sometimes go out to have dinner together because he finishes work.
Right.
And, for example, he feels like grabbing something to eat. And I say, well, okay, so let's do it together.
Right.
So, or he is waiting for his train and I'm available. So we meet in a cafe and, have a drink.
Brilliant. And then do you notice also that they get to practice vocabulary related to food, to how to order food? And do they have any questions about
Because, we have the same rule. I always tell them, Agnieszka listens to everything. So probably we have bugs in our telephones. So once we have a class outside, you have to use the English language.
Good.
So, sorry, you have trained me well. I have to say, you trained me well.
I'm so glad about it. Yeah. Okay. All right. How much time do you think it takes you to normally get the student to be engaged and to feel relaxed?
10 minutes.
All right. That is super fast.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say...
it takes me 10 minutes.
Okay. I thought it was going to be like a few lessons.
No, it takes me 10 minutes.
All right. So
generally, because I do want them to feel comfortable, and I already tell them about don't be afraid of making mistakes. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes.
Of course.
So we are non-natives. So we are allowed to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
So they feel more comfortable, and that's it.
Brilliant.
So 10 minutes. Yeah. Well, I'm brilliant.
You are brilliant. Oh my gosh. We should, publish it somewhere.
I think we should publish it. Yeah. Okay.
I love it. All right. Does it work the same way at university where you teach, where the groups are much larger? Because let's just mention that at our school, if we have groups, the maximum number of students is 3.
Yeah. So when I teach at university, it takes me a bit more time. it definitely takes me a bit more time because you can't really address individual students' needs because you have, 15, 20. The largest group I taught was like 29 people.
Wow.
So, it's very difficult for me to remember the names. I remember the face, but I can't really address the student personally and divide much time to them.
Right.
So in school, you get my undivided attention for 60 minutes.
Right.
Or 90 minutes, depending on
Yeah.
what kind of a class we're having.
Okay.
So
it's
that
just...
makes a huge difference.
All right. And now, what do you think is the common misconception for people to think about how to learn English regarding also the atmosphere in class? Do they even pay attention to that? Do you think a lot of people actually have it in mind as their need to have good atmosphere in class when they first start learning, or do they realize it just later?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. Because I always tell them that if you feel confident, if you feel comfortable, if you feel that you are safe in the environment, then learning a language is pleasure.
Yeah.
So it's done subconsciously.
Right.
So we're talking, we're doing some exercises, we're laughing, we're drinking coffee together, and they see that they acquire the language. So it's not about even learning, but it's about acquiring the language. So that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
They have to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Plus, you're a kind of a teacher that everybody feels comfortable with. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I don't think there is one person on this planet that everyone will feel comfortable with.
Definitely. And trust me when I tell you that there would be few people who would not agree with you.
Yes, so now after all those years of teaching and doing this, I already know that as well. However, there is a group of people, of teachers, that can easily take more than 90% of students, and they will be very successful because they are able to create this right rapport, this bond. And that bond is what makes it comfortable for them, right?
Yeah, well, I have students who I have been teaching for 4 years now.
There you go, exactly.
I have students who I taught, 5-6 years ago, and they contact me and want to have classes again.
Exactly.
So that's something which is great.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what shows you that you're doing a good job.
Exactly.
That's the right direction. I also wanted to ask a bit about the meetups, right? So meetups are those meetings we have once a month on Saturdays. We go out to a cafe. You guys have coffee. You discuss a certain subject that is predetermined, and you send them some info like a video, something like this. However, the topic normally is changed during the meeting, right?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So how does it work? Why does the topic change?
Well, because, again, as you said, I first sent students a text message with a link to an article or a video. I was sending them emails, but not all of them read emails. So we switched to text messages, and this is just a conversation starter. So we meet together and we start a conversation. But when I see that the topic shifts to something which people feel more eager to discuss, then we change the topic.
All right. Which is normally the case.
Which is very normal. Like in a regular conversation, we start a conversation about, politics, which is a difficult topic, and end up talking about, what happened on bus number 167 last Friday night.
Yeah.
So in the natural conversation, topics shift.
Sure.
Normally, naturally. And I think students also have to be ready to it. I had a student, Wojciech. You remember Wojciech, and ask him, because I always ask my students when we finish cooperation, what did you enjoy? Is there something you remember? And he said to me, he really enjoyed the situation when I was asking him random questions, because he said to me, I was never sure what kind of a question I'm gonna get.
All right.
And this helped him to feel more relaxed when he is, doing business meetings, business talks with other people, because he can get any question and he is ready to talk.
That is so true. There you go. So basically what you're doing is you're getting them out of the comfort zone in a sense that they don't know what to expect.
Exactly.
And they just have to deal with it.
And I quite often remain silent through some part of the meetup because it's about them. Right? It's not about me. So I can talk with everyone, and I talk too much sometimes. So it's about the student and about the student playing active part. And this is what I also focus on. I want everyone to participate, and everyone to say what they think, even though sometimes we differ in opinions.
Exactly. And that's actually what students say after meetups with you. They all say that everybody has a voice during those meetings because you're an excellent host. You make sure everybody talks. And so it doesn't matter with extroverts or introverts, they all talk. And that is a very, very uncommon feature, I think. So the characteristic you have that you bring those people together, and even if they are very different from each other, and they have different opinions, nobody's angry, nobody's, controversial, and everybody talks. So my understanding is that what you do is you just make sure they all feel comfortable and they feel at ease.
Yes. Well, you said controversial opinions. I sometimes express controversial opinions just to make them argue a bit.
Okay.
So they say they are all in favor of, changing to eco-friendly vehicles, and I will be the one who says, no, I can't imagine that, you're wrong. And they have to convince me, so they have to come up with some arguments.
Okay.
So it's also sometimes, but at the end of this meetup, I always tell them, that's not my personal opinion, but, for the sake of the conversation, I will be telling you things which you might find sometimes wrong.
Yeah. All right. So this is what you do.
That's what I do.
Exactly. And this is why you need to be at all our events, because you always do that.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, but you are busy. Okay, let's turn to motivation. When students have been with you for a while, do you sometimes notice a drop in motivation? And what happens? How do you handle that?
Well, generally, when I talk to my students about motivation, I tell them the difference between, the motivation which they get from me and the motivation they have to find in themselves. Because my motivation isn't long-lasting.
Right.
I can encourage them, I can ask them nicely, I can suggest them things. But if they don't find this motivation inside of their own head, it won't work.
It won't work. All right.
Because long-term motivation allows us to stay confident, stay focused, and and develop.
Sure.
And if it's only teacher-based motivation, students will not be able to to stay with us for such a long amount of time.
That is
4,
so
5,
true.
6 years.
Yeah.
Come on.
So true. Absolutely true. In my whole career, I think I've had one student who, when asked about his motivation, he always replied, well, it was me. And I always said it was wrong to have motivation like this. He just said that he was afraid of me. And that...
And it worked.
It did work, yes. So I also taught him for a few years, But then I said, well, you need to do it for yourself as well, because it's never going to be very long-lasting if you do it for somebody else and not yourself.
Exactly.
And so... once you have this pep talk with your students, does that help?
It helps. It helps.
Okay.
Because I also tell them, they also ask me what motivated me. Right. So I always tell them, I wanted to be the teacher. So I knew I had to learn something. So whenever I felt like maybe I'm not going to do some exercises, I imagined myself standing over my, how to say it, standing next to me and, pointing a finger like, do it.
Okay.
Do it. Sorry, you have to do it.
And it worked?
And it worked. I'm here, so, it worked.
Excellent. I love that. All right. And do you sometimes see that students, well, despite all this pep talk, it still doesn't work? What do you do then?
Well, I send them videos on TEDx connected with motivation. I send them articles connected with motivation. So I try to subconsciously introduce the topic.
Sure. All right.
So this is what I do.
That as well.
I even start talking about my motivation. So I get some vocabulary connected with motivation, some learning techniques into the class. And, subconsciously they become, again, motivated.
Sure, exactly. I do the same. Okay. Do you sometimes get students who get distracted or they get disengaged in classes? Because these days we are surrounded by so much stuff, the phones, the blue light and all that. Does it happen?
In individual classes, no. Or at least I don't see it. In group classes as well, because, the students we get are super highly motivated. They just come and they want to learn.
That is so true, yeah. We have very good students.
So I don't find this situation often.
Right. But those groups, those individuals at university, these are young individuals, right?
Yeah.
And
They get distracted very, very easily. And, to be honest, I sometimes do not know what to do.
Okay.
Because, you're teaching adults. So, me telling an adult, drop your phone, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can tell them, this is for you, don't waste the time, try to focus. But also what works for students is I tell them, in some point, you're going to finish university or you're going to finish school and you're going to pay a lot of money to get private classes. And this works.
Okay, I love that.
And this
Okay,
works.
that's amazing. Okay, and what about those students that come and they're so afraid of speaking, it's difficult for them to open their mouth. How do you make them open up?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know. This is my superpower. And they just start talking. I start from something very, very simple, of course. So I talk to them about the weather. I talk to them about, I always find something like, if someone has this different style, like, oh, yeah, you have an interesting style of wearing clothes, for example. Or I ask them, I see the book they are reading, or if they are shy, I was like, oh my God, I'm sometimes also so shy. So, or what happened? So, I try to start from something which is super, super general. Once they become comfortable, we talk about everything else.
That's the thing, though, with people with a barrier. Once you find something in common.
Yeah, a common ground is important. Yeah.
Again, your listening helps, right? Because,
Listening and observing.
Right.
Right, because, you have to even see a person, because, you'll know whether a person, you can judge. I know judging is a terrible word, but you can judge that someone will be more into fashion, someone will be more into sport, into music, into food, and then you can start a conversation.
Brilliant. Okay. So basically observation and listening, which on the one hand, well, that sounds very basic.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, somehow others are not as successful at creating this lovely atmosphere as you are yet.
True.
So I think there is not enough of underlining this aspect, right?
Yeah.
All right. How do you recommend using English outside of the classroom? How do you do that?
Well,
without the cafe, the
I
restaurant.
always tell students to, because let's be honest, every one of us is watching or watches Netflix or any other streaming platform, right? So I tell them, turn off the subtitles, switch to only English language.
Yeah.
Because, some of them, of course, our students tell me that, well, I do that, but I have subtitles on.
Yeah.
And I tell them, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because if all of us watch films in English with English subtitles and yet none of us can speak brilliantly the language, which means you have to turn off the subtitles. It's going to be problematic at the very beginning, but you're going to see results after, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So give yourself some time. And I always tell them, listen to some podcast in English, watch a video in English, or because I like pubs, unfortunately, or fortunately, I always tell them, in Warsaw, we have so many lovely Irish pubs, British pubs, Scottish pubs.
We do.
Go there, yeah. And, you can eavesdrop on people.
Yeah.
I know eavesdropping is the bad thing, but, you can be sitting, drinking your latte, and at the same time listening to two English people talking about
English weather.
English weather, exactly.
Yeah, football.
So that makes it, interesting. I don't know, maybe, but it works.
Encouraging, for sure.
Encouraging is a nice word. Yeah.
Because, all right. So to sum up, if you were to define the needs of students in general, I know it's very difficult, but would you say that majority of students need something that is this one aspect or something that is very general? Like, what do students need? Like, if you were to give one thing that you find in common for many students.
So I think they need what all of us need. They need someone who's going to listen to them. That's the thing. Just listen, because they will tell you everything they need. They will tell you, maybe even not directly, but indirectly. They will tell you how to motivate them.
Sure.
They will tell you what kind of vocabulary they are really in need. So it's just about listening.
Okay.
Like, just listen to the student.
All right. So for everyone out there, listen up. You need
Listen
to be
up.
listened to.
Yeah.
You teachers, you need to listen. You
Listen to the
students, you need to
students.
talk,
Just
right?
listen. Because, I think we quite often listen, but we are just listening because someone is talking, but we are not actually paying attention to what they are saying.
Sure.
So listen and pay attention. Make it all about the student, not about the teacher. Okay?
Absolutely.
We're already stars, let's be honest. We're already stars, superstars. But now the 60 minutes is about them.
Excellent.
It's about them.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
And that was
pleasure.
exactly what I wanted to hear. So thank you for coming, Łukasz, and I hope to see you
Pleasure.
again.